Hi everybody, it's Jess, your go-to YouTube dance commentator, and it is round 2 of the IDL 2026 Sydney series. We got the top 3 to look at, 1 Million, GRV, and Brotherhood. We're going to watch them, then I'm going to go through each particular routine, share my thoughts on the criteria, what they scored well in, what are areas of improvement, things along the lines, maybe a hot take or two, not sure, but I'm looking forward to taking a dive into here, so let's go. 1 Million. Okay, on to GRV. and Brotherhood. Okay, on to the judging. Let's see. So we have complexity. GRV took that by 0.33 against Brotherhood and a whole point from 1 mil. Staging. Okay, musicality, creativity, stylistic athleticism, cleanliness, technical execution. Okay. Okay, I want people to take note of that. Interesting. Spacing. This, if anything, this should show you technical execution does not always equal complexity. That's why they're separate. Spacing. Okay, projection, communication, stamina. Okay, so these are really close. It makes sense why they are close. And see, this is going to be very interesting to talk through because this is the first case where, I don't know, what's the best way to word it? Welcome to the world of when you have established teams with go-to fingerprints of styles. How do they still get judged whenever you're seeing repeats of formats? Because this is something that D-League has conditioned me and many, many others to have to navigate through because we've looked at years of that mess. So let's get started. Okay, we're going to start with 1 million and work our way up to Brotherhood. I do know there's a lot of mixed reviews about the rankings of this particular series. I'm going to do my best to just look at the routines, go off the criteria, and give the feedback like I generally would in comparison to being overly influenced off of, you know, the feedback of the internet, because that can push me in different directions in ways that I don't think I can be as helpful. So I'm going to try my best to kind of stay locked in and share my thoughts the way that I normally would. So let's go ahead and get started from the top of their section. So I believe the track that they used was is used in Vocaloid, right? Which I think is kind of cool. So we started in more of a grid framed, structured, leveled formation. I like the twinkling in of the fingers. You have the heels and the arms ended up being connected there. Then you bring it in and out, matching our music pretty well. I like the levels being established. This formation structure, however, is very familiar. If you've seen any tutting, tutting trending kind of thing on the internet, on social media, it's stacked in that way a lot of times, and you can add like 60 people to it. You know what I mean? I hope you know what I'm talking about. Point is the formation style is something we are very familiar with. I do like how we chose to interpret the song through our choices and our movement, though. It's really cool. We accent down. The foldovers are really nice. I do think it's not quite as clear and clean as I think would make it really readable. I loved the canon choice there as we progress it down. So I really liked the choices in that. That really helped in complexity. I know they scored pretty low in complexity. I'm going to say a reason why that could be we have a lot of really fun moments like this intro where you have a lot of complexity, syncopation, you have the dynamics going in from our levels, from our formation itself. This was so beautiful and a fantastic tone setter for the start of the dance, right? But if you're noticing with this transition, the transition itself is pretty simple. Now, the content is fun, but notice that we're following a very simplified pocket of timing. So I wonder if that could be a component as to why the complexity was lower than the expectation, as well as, I would say, creativity. Because remember, with creativity, it's not just concept. It's going to be the original movement as well as your transitions. And so far, that transition's not the most creative in terms of opportunity, but we have more to watch. So here we go. I like the levels here. I like the different groupings going on that as well. The peace signs out of it is really cute. I like the performance quality of this overall. I think a general note that I'm just noticing so far is the cleanliness could absolutely improve. So this walk on the pocket's fun. I like the hinge on it too. Once again, I like the differences, the subtle differences in the angles. The levels are great here. But notice even here, I love how we're matching tone, but notice we're doing it in a way that causes a sense of repeat. You know, that wasn't a general note we've heard many a times when it comes to royal family. And they're not the only ones that are, you know, talked about in that regard. I would equate any time that you see movement that, you know, has an overly trendy bag where you end up repeating a lot on both sides, which I believe, in my humble opinion, every single team in the top three, their sets had a section where it did have a bit, not redundancy, but it did have a bit of a simpler pocket of timing, so how you would count it, as well as the content itself didn't elaborate further than what you normally see it as, if that makes sense. So the note is not just to 1 mil, that's just, once again, I'm trying to provide clarity as to why certain routines may come, you know, score a certain way. I'm not a judge, and I'm not saying all the judges scored this way. There's a chance that some judges scored lower and higher than what you see on the final results on the Instagram post. But I like this transition. That's risky business. That is a clever and creative transition, right? The quickness of it, I think timing, spacing, and I think cleanliness could be really helpful. I like the transition of this as well. But the drop down is cool. We have a speed change going in. You notice it is eating up a lot of time though. It's fantastic in terms of communication and projection, but you are sacrificing complexity. But I like the usage with this pull happening with the walk off of this. Is a really fun transition, not just walking. It's more isolated and hinged based. So you have the pigtails out of it too. We flick it low high. I like the rotation out of it is really fun. Knock it down. The hops are cool. Everyone has a little bit of individuality here. I mean, it's really fun, but remember what I was mentioning in round one, not just with 1 mil, but with many teams, where if you are choosing to go, I think I said this about Jam Republic's round one, when you're choosing to have individual moments, if we're not showcasing cleanliness and clarity leading up to that in certain sections that could really enhance those sections, it makes it harder to appreciate the individual moments as individualized for the sake of concept or for the sake of content, right? So that would be an general note given there too. So we have the knees going in. But what's really interesting though is 1 mil got the stamina. So if this helps stamina, doesn't get influenced off of your complexity. It has to deal with based on how you're projecting, presenting, and showcasing your ability in the beginning. Are you able to showcase that at the end? Are you able to escalate that or elevate that to where you don't look fatigued not one time. And I think 1 Mil did a great job of that, which is why they were rewarded. And they weren't the only ones rewarded. I think that's great. So they bring it in. So they end up doing a split. We knock or tap on the foot. The bridge is nice. Rotate it through. I like the fullness of this. Great section with a turn, and then we syncopate it with a switch off of our knees. That's really nice there. Then we drop down to the ground. Notice it was a bit of a chaotic transition. I don't mind it, but if you take away the dynamic of the fullness that people were individually expressing, the transition itself was more of a simpler choice. Once again, not that big of a problem at all. So we end up having the accent. Notice we have this tone shift going in here where we've changed our posture, we've changed the dynamics that we've chosen to do, such as going loud to soft movement, because I know, nope, I said I wasn't going to go off of public opinion, so I'm not going to do that. When it comes to the concept, yes, the concept is not really a westernized concept. Is that okay? Yes. Do you run a risk with that? I would also say yes, because of what circuit you're in. The language is predominantly English here. It would be very similar to if you're using an all English song that is a different genre than street dance in D-League, where you may have a panel who's not fluent in English or may not understand the context. It would be, honestly, if you had Brotherhood compete their set at D-League, you would possibly run the same risk, if that makes sense. So I think that they were rewarded for the dynamic choices and the performance quality of their set. I do think an area that could have worked against them in their score was the transitions that I'm noticing so far. But we have more to look at. We're only halfway done. So we have the resetting here. I like how she established center. Then we end up having a popping section, which I really appreciate. They seem to have scored pretty high on technical execution and authenticity, which I thought was nice. They do have an authentic range of choices. I do think we have a bit different choices of execution in comparison to those on the ground, and then those are all different who are all standing up as well. The pulse was really cool to match on the music. I think their musicality was fun to explore as well. Did they score low? I would say yes, but I think a component is... what is it? When you're dealing with musicality, it is the visual representation of your music. Were they choosing to go more predictably on their movement choices to the track? I mean, that really does depend on the individual that's watching and what they've been exposed to as somebody who has looked at dance with this type of eye or this type of analysis. So we have some syncopation going in there. Syncopation in the dance world would mean navigating on the offbeat, so not going on the straight tempo, right? So this body roll was really fun, but I will say some of our choices, like you have Leah Kim, who's really proficient at popping, and this would be under waving, and waving is about connection and making sure things are legible and readable. Most street dance styles are like that. You need it to make sense. It needs to be legible. So in the case here, you have some members, like I talked about this with Humuza, doing that Afro pocket. Not many people on Brotherhood was doing the Afro pocket the way Humuza was, and that opened up an area of weakness in that particular section from their round one. In the case here, not everybody is able to proficiently do these types of techniques in the same way as those in the very front. A judge doesn't just look at the front. An audience may, but a judge is supposed to look at all of it. Look and find people from all different sections of it, because you look at the general picture, not just those that the group is trying to show, hey, only look at this person, right? So that would be my general no. It's fun that we have a feature moment. Some of it does have, what is it? Some of it is a little bit unclear in terms of her direction. I wasn't quite sure if she was trying to be polyrhythmic in her different types of waves that she was executing, but that could just be the speed and the fact it's slow. It would make more sense if it was sped up, right? So that ended up being a hinge. Her wave was cool, and I like the ripple around, but the hinge was fascinating because normally you would see people go head, body roll down to the inversion of the knees. And some did, but it looked like some people didn't do that. And it could just be the jersey, not quite sure. But I like the isolation and accent. I like the walk with the with the raise of the torso. And I like this isolated hip on it too to create the transition. That was a fun transition. But I am noticing on complexity, we are choosing to pursue left and right equal representation, which when you don't deviate from that, when you create a pattern that's equal on both sides, that's not going to equate to complex. It's going to be a pattern that's more simple. Simple doesn't mean easy, not what I'm saying. But in the context here, the formation is really fun, but you notice we're doing things almost 4 times, right? So that can contribute to complexity. So we end up accenting, and then we fold it in with the wrist. The swing around is fun. The build up is fun. The body roll is cool. Not everybody's matching on that body roll though. And I will say these types of outfits are not as forgiving because you have a highlighted color, a really, really loud color like hot pink. It's cool, but it runs the risk on we can see your spacing a lot easier. We can see how far apart your legs are a lot easier. And anytime that you bend that leg, it's gonna show up a little bit easier than if you're wearing black. I loved the change here, the build up on it, but unfortunately some of our choices aren't very clean in terms of the selection of our timing, right? But I love the patience and the pause here. I think that was fun. Some of us were a little bit premature in setting up past that there. So it's little things like that where it did look like we started here and then it was here and then it expand out. It did give the impression we were supposed to all go at the same time for a very abrupt surprise. So that wasn't quite happening. Which happens, that's the tricky thing. That's a risk you take with musicality, which could be a contributing factor to maybe a lower score. So they end up bringing it in, sending it out. Here we go. We have this, oh goodness, that's not so lasso. I would say the whacking variant that we have here with the bring it out. I like the kick with the travel up there with the arms. All that looks really nice. We end up swinging. I like the variance of our I was about to say waving. No, of our whacking. I really like our twirls that we're showcasing here. I know twirls, we would hear that more in the in Campbell locking, but I thought that was really fun. We ended up accenting like the head swinging around down to the ground. We roll. The log roll was really cute, and then we finish with a little dramatic hinge back. Drop it down. I think that was a 3-part ripple. A bit unclear on the second and third ripple because of either the quantity of people or the spacing that we have to do that. We end up accenting up, and then we headbang, 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 and we walk away with a 1. I like the lingering finish. Some people had a really nice clear projection at the tail end and some just brought it up. So those are like little details there. But all in all, I thought this was really fun. I don't want 1 mil to be discouraged about using this type of concept. Do I think that we could elevate it in some ways, like adding more complexity in the content itself? Possibly. I really liked the choice. I think their concept helped them in creativity more than I think a lot of people are giving them credit for. So I'm totally here for this, and I hope more teams are taking risks like this in the future. Okay, GRV time. Now they were not super far off. They were probably, I mean, a point and a half more than 1 mil, which is really not a big margin at all. That's like 0.5 from each judge, if that. And then they were about less than 2 points from Brotherhood, which once again, say is these are really, really close scores. So I think every team should be proud of themselves. Oh, I didn't even start from the top. What am I doing? Okay, they ended up getting three categories. Man, pretty well done. So they had complexity, musicality, and stylistic athleticism. Okay then. So we have a speed change going on. Then we end up double bouncing, and then we reset and set it down. So you see the playfulness of our timings. I think, too, that regardless if there's familiarity onto the track or not, and we'll touch on this a lot more with Brotherhood because of the familiarity of format, like I feel like I've mentioned already, but in pertaining to GRV specifically, complexity of choreography does not have creativity as the main focal point of it. That's why we have our own creative category. Complexity has to do with how polyrhythmic, multiplanar, how much multitasking, how dense your content is. Now, and the interesting question would be, is complexity rewarded even if it doesn't cater to the music? Interesting. I think musicality and complexity go hand in hand, because if you're just moving really fast for the sake of moving fast, then there's no fun in that, and a lot of your scores are going to suffer as a result of that. So focusing on one category too much can really work against you. So I liked the feature moment with the 2 outliers happening to cater to it. I thought that was really fun. The lift on that was really, really smooth. So I would give them mad props for that. And then we have the accent with the heel, with the pointed foot. We bring it in, and then we kick with the look to the side. Thought that was really fun to see there. Pas de bourrée. I mean, a smidgen cleaner would be helpful. My guy right there was a little bit too fast. And then also We ended up stalling or double stepping a little too quickly too. So our range, our cleanliness could improve. I thought the opening did have a lot of readability. So far, both 1 mil and GRV had spectacular openers for their sections. So the accent, bringing it forward, they switch it off. You have this sound that's being utilized with the full body in comparison to just isolated to a particular extremity. So that's going to help with athleticism. So the actual usage of the full body for it. Then we end up accenting and isolating with the hips, and then we have the different levels in play there. I like the push onto the chest. I thought that was really cool. The lift up is nice. The accent with the gesture of the arms I thought was cool. Then we end up having more of a remix deviation going on here. So it allows your audience, even though if they've heard the song before, they can, be introduced to different musicality options, which it looked like they score pretty well in. Then they lift it up with a drop down, with the swings of the arms are also fun there. Then we end up having more individuality. Now the individuality does look a bit more readable here because I would say there was a lot of clarity and cleanliness that they held on to, despite, of course, those couple of hiccups with those range choices, to where we can really see that clearly. Now, if they choose to continue to showcase individuality as a transition, that can really affect their transition score and their creativity as well. So we have our next feature. She brings it through. Bring it forward. Body roll, we end up rolling down to the side. So we end up having more of this crawling position where it looks like we're creating a letter L here. We have a small group bringing it around. So the accent hit, and then we have this isolation with the trace or the tension lift on that. Okay, so we have one of our members. What was he doing there? Arm swing. It looked like it went the different direction. That was a bit tricky to read over here on the side because we all were catering to the same level. There wasn't a level shift that helped us see him as our feature. Did everybody look at him? No. So he deviated. Was that I forgot the dance and this is my choice, or was he supposed to be feature? Because normally a couple things happen psychologically that help aid your audience to be able to see where you want us to see. And we talk about this all the time in group choreographies outside of professional dance leagues, such as if you're looking at the individual. So sometimes when you see an entire group look at one person and they're the only one looking at us, we're going to want to look at them. Or there's a very large shift in levels that happens surrounding the individual from the previous formation they were in. So in the case they did stuff together, if there was a drop in level, he would stand out if he was supposed to stand out, if that makes sense. So that would be my note, because then he joins right back in. So I'm not sure if that was just a missed feature opportunity or if we forgot and we just compensated. Either way, so we have a rigid rock happening there with the hinge, with the lift up. The slow walks with the head nods are fun. We end up sitting it down. I like the head with the knock, bringing it in with the elbows. I really like number 6 on this type of choreography movement. Now, I will say, though, the note, though, is I love the personality of the pull of the texture of our torso, meaning how we're allowing the torso to live through the sounds it's justifying. That's the texture of it, the font of the mover. I wish there were more people who were showcasing that degree of texture, because I think that would help in, authenticity a little bit more, because I think that was one of their lowest scores, was authenticity. They didn't do a lot of fundamental street styles. It was heavy hybrid, and I think that contributed to that score. So they accented with a punch in with a 3-step turn. We end up rocking with an overhead, sending it out. The bases are fun. We send it in, and then we accent, drop it through. A little tricky to see the readability of the section here. And spacing can improve specifically in that section there. Yeah, it looks like we're here, and we take our thumb when we do a subtle gesture, most likely for wordplay choices out of that. We rotate it, we bring it in. I like the slinkiness of the head of the torso as we send the level down on that is cool. We rotate that hand around to make it look like your feature. We knock it out. It does give the impression more of its combo switch offs, where we have a combo and then we're waiting for the next combo to come up. So that could be an area of opportunity where, these transitions, switching between sections, instead of them being like, we're just doing a section to do it, we are enhancing or further pushing whatever concept that we're choosing to go with, if that makes sense. So that's a really susceptible thing that every single team that we have, they're susceptible to doing it. So they end up rocking it forward to the level change, and then we do a nice little slinky shoulder out of it. The head is really nice with the knee. And then that part, I love on the doom with the bass, and I like how it redirects. That's really fun. Even though there's a lot of familiar movement in it, it's very satisfying. So it really helps in the musicality side, where it feels familiar, but it's not like, oh, I was totally expecting that redirection after the double bass, right? So now we have partnering moment. It looks like we have a whole group facing the back, and then we have partnering facing the front. Something I'm noticing, let me see, what do they score in staging? Okay, they scored the same as 1 mil in staging. There is, as much as I appreciate everybody being on stage, there's a lot of similar levels happening. Or there's a lot going on, and because we're not squeaky clean in some of our areas, it's affecting where I need to focus, and accent and choose. Now, this is the group that I'm focusing on, but is it as clear and readable as it could be? I think there's an area of opportunity for that. I liked the hip choice on that. It looked like one of my dancers, I could really see hers, but it's because of the white, in comparison to some only had black on. They hit it through and they send it down. So we have more going on the sides too, which is cool. Unlock the swag, and then we end up sending it low. So we have a bit of a simple transition here. I mean, in terms of pockets of timing, not in actually what's happening. I mean, they're hinging back and walking. So I like the assist on that with the rock down is cool. Okay, now, this section I thought was interesting. So they're doing the same thing. It's same thing on both sides, and I touched on this with 1 mil, and I said that every team did it. This section is like that. That could have affected, I think that could have affected their technical execution authenticity. Yes, they got complexity of choreography. I think this would be an example of they supplemented it accordingly. Instead of everybody doing it the exact same way the whole time, you had dynamics to supplement. Example, during that segment, it wasn't all in unison. It was in windowed mirroring. And then they rotate it. So there's your unison. They added complexity to the tail end of it. So they end up doing a little heel click. Now that part, yes, they did that all in unison. Then they condensed the formation. Like this section here, I really don't think worked in their favor for some of these categories. It is significantly simpler than everything else they've done. But I like the side flip on that, which was cool. Then they end up accenting with a double bass of the knees. Now, even though, you know, they had a simpler section, the whole routine is not like that, right? It's not like most of it's simple with a couple moments of complexity. They have a lot of complexity in different ways, but that really stuck out to me because of how simple it was. You know what I mean? So I thought that was interesting. I don't think that section worked in their favor. Uh-oh. Oh no, it froze. Come back. Here we go. So they go from back to front. That could be a little bit cleaner, and I'm noticing with the torsos, they weren't fully rotated there. The subtlety of this was really nice. It tone shifted quite effectively, right? And then they rotate it through. They send it around with the toss. That was a really cool redirection of the forearm, right? On the slap sound. Oh, cool. Drop it down. We toss it. And then we end up sending it, rotating it back. And then we knock it. All that's fun. And then we hit it through. Then we retract it. We have complexity through extremities going in here. And then we knock it back. We hit. I like the stall of that. Body roll out. We rock it back. Some individuality there, which I would say it's okay. Because that wasn't the squeakiest, cleanest thing. Same notes that I'm giving like I did to 1 mil. I'm giving here. Rock backs, I think, didn't help in that individuality. And we end up knocking with the fun presentation forward. I do wish she stood still just a little bit longer. And then and then we're like, yeah. So I know there's many people who probably like really wanted to see 1 mil take second. This is not a big gap whatsoever between third and first. It feels that way because you're dealing with 8s compared to 9s, but in the grand scheme of things, all of these routines are competitive in their own right. They have really good moments in them. Now, there was a refreshment that happened with 1 mil that I do believe people really wanted them to get rewarded for it. I do think they did in some ways, truly. And I think with GRVs, even though they may not have had a more creative concept set, they did have movements and content density that really worked in their favor to help with some of their scores. And if you notice the complexity of choreography, 1 mil has 8.33, which I could get behind, versus a 9.33. It's just that one section with GRV I just found was so interesting, how simple it was. But remember, it was just a single section there that the content itself was like that. Now, if it comes to staging, both GRV and 1 mil scored the exact same score. That also makes sense. So I think both of them had interesting competitive areas. I do stand by that 1 mil had a 9 and GRV had an 8.83. So 1 mil beat GRV in a couple categories, the way that GRV beat Brotherhood in a couple categories. You know what I mean? So I think like 1 mil is not as far off. Like people, just to kind of finish that up, I think these two being neck and neck, if either of them took second or third, I don't see it as being as big of an issue because the point difference is less than 0.05, really. I mean, like 0.5, maybe. So, okay, we're going to go to first place Brotherhood. So I'm going to remember to actually go from the beginning and like what I try to do with GRVs. Okay. So the concept idea with theirs, they talked about the after party. They absolutely gave the impression of looking hungover at a bachelor event or frat party, right? So I think the song catered to the ties wrapped around the head as well as the disheveled hair, I think contributed to that overall idea, just like the hot pink skirt and sweats happening from 1 mil. So you have that after party, so we had more individuality happening there. Then it turns into more of an isolated, leveled, interactive focal point choice there. Then we have a getting naughty. He says, no, no. So I like the gesture of individuality there. We end up accenting, bring it through. With the build-up, it's fun. They end up doing that about 4 times in unison. So we end up doing a little speed change with the head accent, with everybody moving different directions out of that new feature. Tosses it, and then we rotate to ripple it out. We end up taking it through like we're giddy up, let's go. And then you have that after party with the subtlety bobble in the head. Are they clean? It could absolutely be cleaner for sure. I do believe they had about 3 days to work on this because their music didn't get released. Should we use that as a form of sympathy? No. If you're, for fan vote, sure, but most of the time you're not going to know any of that going in. So we have to look at these regardless of circumstance because that maintains the integrity of the scope of the criteria, right? Even though I know about it, the notes will still stand, but I do have that in mind for like understanding why we may not be as clean, why we may not have as much creativity in play. You know what I mean? So we have a lot more unison happening here. So that would be an area of opportunity, is breaking away from that, really working on our spacing for this section. And then we end up adding a little rock away as we transition off. And we end up trotting off as well. Small group, and then we accent it around. A lot of combo-based choices in unison. I like that we deviate inside to outside. We knock it forward. We have a lot more viral bag or viral pocket of exploration on this. We're not deviating away from how the moves are normally structured or seen in the social media space. That's something that they do pretty good with about combating, but it does look a little bit more viral. So this right here, going down to the ground, I noticed this in the close-up with some of them. They look like, we rotate through. When they rotate around, it absolutely gives the intention of looking drunk, dazed, things along the line. So I like the intricacy happening in the top part, but notice there was only 3 people engaging in that complexity, and everybody else was choosing to environmentally just rotate around, right? Those little details, quantity can absolutely influence when complexity gets rewarded. If you have everybody on your roster doing it compared to 3 people doing the complex thing, that's going to affect that kind of score accordingly depending on your judge. So we have this run transition. I like the look there and a drop level there too. Then we pick it up with the clap, clap, and we rotate it. Not everybody rotated, which I thought was interesting. I like the head on that with the run, 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 and then we have some more running to the opposite side here. Now, somebody I would say I'm not trying to dive into like the public discourse, but I do get questions in my comments at times, and I'm gonna like double check the question before I answer it. Okay, read the question. I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna settle and simmer on that one, and hopefully I'll be able to. I'll answer it. I'll probably text them the answer. But on a different note, I do want to touch on their choreography structure, and I do believe there is a lot of familiarity and structure that we've already been exposed to within the IDL circuit. This is something that I am very excited to talk about, and that is in the realm of familiarity in a league. So if you've ever watched D-League with me, you'll know exactly where I'm going with this. There are teams on D-League that have been around for many years, about 5, like since the inception of the league back in 2020, 2021 season. I'm going to use the team Cyber Agent Legit, for example. They are so good at what they do. They specialize in popping, campbell locking, and breaking. And you see that low-key based on which members show up in the roster and in the lineup, you can kind of get the gist and idea of what kind of routine they're going to do. A lot of times their routines, they're very complex, very authentic, difficult, fantastic musicality, incredible synchronization sections, great solo feature moments, but they're safe in terms of the expectation and how you normally see them perform. When you see them perform a few times, you get used to their format. They have a format that works for them. They score very well with it. So at times, depending on your opponent, being able to flex on the familiar and still know you can get a couple judges because of the competency of said format that you've developed for yourself, that is an absolutely okay route to take. So in the context here with Brotherhood, regardless of their intention behind the format and structure, even though the fan vote may get swayed or the public opinion may feel like that was a little bit too boring or it's, not as difficult, XYZ, did it match the criteria? Yes, it did. Did it match all the criteria? It technically did, but there were other teams that outscored them or matched their score in other categories. So I think it's one of those things where really the main category that can be affected off of that type of perspective of something not captivating you, or it kind of gives this plateaued effect for what you're conditioned to see, which by you watching dance, it's making you more fluid and familiar as an enthusiast, a layman, or a professional into this league, which is great. That the creativity is the only score that'll falter in that because it's familiar. It's not something new or refreshing. However, that doesn't mean that cleanliness or complexity are going to get docked just because it's a routine that feels familiar. Does that make sense? So hopefully I was able to articulate that okay. And yes, I used an example with D-League. That's the best example I can give because that is the only other professional dance league that exists with these types of conversations we've been able to have. And so hopefully this will help bring, a different perspective to help you be able to enjoy watching routines when you see them, regardless if they are as captivating as they used to feel, right? That's an okay thing that both can exist. Rotating through the range could absolutely improve on that. So the variants are there. The little tap downs with the scuff out, the absence of it with the bite, that gives such a, that's a Royal 2013. I remember seeing it. Was it Keel? I think it was Keel who says, no, it wasn't. It was bite me. I remember that there, but I like the placement of that here. I think that was a fun musical moment. The tone on that was teasy. They tend to have pretty basic transitions with different pockets, not different pockets, same pockets of timing with this trot. Knock it down, sending it up. Subtlety in the chest was fun. We sent it out, rotate it around. We end up knocking the arm, and then we end up dropping it down. Then we end up switching up it's more of a remix tone shift, which I think was so needed. We go into a Dougie with the clap. Bit simple, but they do supplement that simplicity with levels. They mess with the timing on it too, which is helpful. So we go into a Cat Daddy. They speed change environmentally, so they're not just frozen with the head. So then they all do it the same. They play with a different timing. It's still a simple timing, but they still deviate. Then they reject it. I like this, was it swag surf? Swag surfing. The heel click out of it is fun. Taking it down. I like this little tip-tap-toe step out there, which was really fun. Not like in light feet, but that was fun. Going into a birdie. So this would be the example that I would give as more of a familiarized social dancing. They didn't variant these nearly as much. They just manipulated the timings of them, but they didn't manipulate the actual dance itself like they normally do, right? Now, do I judge them off of what I know that they can do, or do I judge them from what they're showing me here? You judge based on what you see, right? Just like in a lot of circuits, a judge's job is not to compare and set expectation for a team that's unrealistic because you know the team. Not fair. Just like if Brotherhood's been dominant, they don't need to be judged harsher faster than a team that's coming out from behind. There's no integrity to be had there, which is why, despite there being more simplicity showcased here, that can affect the public reception, but that can still, it's going to affect complexity of choreography, but they are supplementing it through their staging, which I do believe they ended up, hold on. Do we even have the right score on? Hold on. Let me see. Yeah. They ended up scoring pretty well on staging because they used their staging to supplement for complexity a lot more than using complexity in their content, which could be why the scores are a little bit different like that. Just hypothesis. I like the step with the kick out of it. That was really fun. Then it goes pull up. Not quite clear there. It would just look like we moved to a different spot, but the same, kind of huddle formation. I like the kick out of it. We're building up the density, I think, which really helps. He acts it down. Let's see, what do they get for creativity? Yeah. And they end up rocking it down. The level drop is really fun. The ball changes are also fun. Would I personally, the creativity score, if you look at, let me look at the criteria, list itself. Because creativity, and I don't know if the content itself they got creativity on. Concept, because of the after party, frat party, that kind of stuff, possibly could help. The transitions, some of the transitions through content, I think, could have really helped them in that way. But I would say the concept, maybe. But then I know there's people who may feel like, well, why did 1 mil not get rewarded for their concept? I think they did to a degree because of how they chose to frame it. It's just there's different types of transitions and other categories factor into that, I think. So the ponies out of it, it's fun. So now we go into light feet. End up hopping over it there. End up doing, what is that? Tone wop twists. Accenting. It's fun. Sending it back. Tic-tac-toes. I like the different spacing on it too. Into the pistol squat. That helped with stylistic athleticism for that because they didn't just drop outright. They added a pistol squat to it. So there was difficulty added there. Sending it back. I would say here, out of all the genres that we see Brotherhood do, with Humuza as the feature, I would say light feet, they hold it the closest, at least in this particular section. Jono clap. That was a basic Jono clap, but I like how they expanded it out. We drop it down. We send it back to a lock-in. So the key elements are represented. Just like, in round 1 with 1 mil, how they did a Vogue section, they had the key elements there. We touched on the, for me, I touched on the authenticity, not relying upon one person, just like with GRV. Even though GRV didn't have all the key elements, they just had nuance. Even though Brotherhood had whacking in their first round, was it executed correctly? Not entirely. And it was a bit more on the simpler side, but what they supplemented with, or what their target was, it gave the impression on dissing Royal through the usage of whacking, as well as the timing, the range, and the cleanliness of that said whacking. There was the intensity that helped with the projection of it. So there's a chance there were different targets on the criteria list for their whacking section, outside of just stylistic justification, because they technically didn't need it in their first round. But because Royal does it, it makes sense why they added it in. Does that make sense? Anyway, so they hit it out, and then we end up punching the percussion to match the bases. They drop it through, and they push it down, and then they accent front, and they rotate it, send it off with the toss. It's fun. Push it through with the turn, and then it turns into an add-on that did look like almost a mistake, but because you had other people join in on that, I think that helps. Spacing is a little bit off because we can't clearly see everybody in this group here in the way that makes it equal. So then they rotate it very isolated with the V-step, isolated upper body through. Good bases with the punch, sending it back with a drop down, and then we send it off. They did pretty good. On the projection is really nice. They hit it like the pose. It's gimmicky, a bit simple on that transition, but they ended up doing and transitioning on a similar pocket of timing across. So it's fun. At least they're not all doing unison the entire time, but this last little bit, they are showcasing a lot more density, which helps push through on their stamina score. And then they take the glasses, making it look like we live in our lives in the after party. So looking at the score sheet for myself, there are a couple categories that I am surprised that we have 9s in from any team, because I'm not used to the scores being... These still feel generous to me, but I also don't know how Arnell and Nicholas want the scoring to be scaled, because every score is scaled to a degree. HHI, it's a be as honest as possible. If it's a below average routine, it's going to score in the below average scale. If you can't judge it, give it a 100. That's a very viable choice. If you can't judge or find any issues with the stamina, give them full points for it. You know what I mean? So that absolutely checks out. I'm not in the room where it happened. So I'm just one perspective based on what I know of the criteria, the conversations I've had with Arnell about it, and things of the like. So remember, take what I say with just one perspective of many. Go be curious about these things for yourself, and don't lose hope in the transitions and how you're conditioning yourself to view the league. I know I've had some different emotional shifts within the past week, if I'm being honest, from watching the live stream to getting familiarized with public opinion on certain teams and those types of things. I've had to reevaluate or reassess my position. And how do I take responsibility for the things that I say and how I word it, right? Do I take the stance of I'm going to, no one gets to bully these teams and I'll show you? I don't think that's very helpful in comparison to stay true to what the job is. What my job is here is we're going to look at the routine, help understand to some degree why the scores pan out the way that they do, and would I have done the same thing? I mean, maybe, it really just depends on being there versus watching here. And I always had the close-up shots, but now we have the wide cams, so it's a little bit easier. I hope that we have the wide cams a little bit more often for the live stream. I think it'd be so much easier to be able to really appreciate the teams. And I think it could subside some public discourse a little bit faster because we have more clarity. We have clarification. Out of all the scores that I'm noticing, I think it's really cool that we have a lot of teams scoring really high in stamina. I think that's surprising. I think that's great to see. And then also the fact that all teams are at least 8 points and higher on the creativity side. Creativity is really hard to justify because all of us have been exposed to so much in the world and so much in dance outside of this league and outside of these teams, to where it's really hard to continue to elevate and step up. So the fact that we're continuing to challenge that is really impressive, despite having to create 2 routines every series, right? And having to use both routines in every series for some of our teams, right? So I'm looking forward to the commentary, and please keep in mind, this is my first season doing IDL. It's the first time that I'm involved in this way with IDL. So please give me grace if I may not be able to articulate something as effectively, or if I say it in the wrong way. Please give me the ability to be open, and I'm always open to discussions and commentary from you guys, to where we get to grow together so we can continue to appreciate the art of dance and the fact that we get to really see dance be elevated in this way. You guys know me, I know you. I'm Jess, and I'll catch you guys in the comments and on the flip side. Bye.